The San Francisco 49ers are back in the win column as the Niners played their best all-around game of the season on Sunday against the Bears. We're recapping it here. This is the San Francisco 49ers Report. I'm Chase Sr. Thanks for hanging out. And finally, it's a victory for the Niners. If you're excited that San Francisco ended their 3-game losing skid, we haven't had a victory Monday in a while. Then I want you to hit that thumbs up icon, like the video, plenty to talk about. So let's dive in right now. And I hope everybody out there had a great weekend and your weeks are off to a great start. Let's start off here on today's show. I thought that was Kyle Shanahan's best game of the season, and I know a lot of people are going to counter that and say, Chase, it's the Chicago Bears. You're probably already writing it down in the comments section. Let me stop you and say this. The Bears came in as a top 10 defense. And all year, they've played very good defensive football in the toughest division in the National Football League in the NFC North. They're playing against the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. And Chicago's defense entered Sunday's game at Levi Stadium 9th in points per game, 5th on third downs, and 1st in the red zone. There will be fans who hate Kyle Shanahan, who aren't happy with how this season has gone, who aren't pleased with this victory, who will still say, I don't care. It's the Chicago Bears. They didn't have a head coach. They fired Matt Eberflus. Kyle Shanahan should have won this game. San Francisco hung 38 points on a top 10 defense. You got to be happy with that. And a few things that I liked from Kyle Shanahan, the first drive. It was Shanahan's best opening drive of the season. Now, unfortunately for all of us, the Niners found an identity 14 weeks in. They played their best game of the season, offense, defense, special teams, in week 14. And it kind of stinks because I think it's too little too late. But Kyle Shanahan at least made some adjustments that we've been calling for him to make. Opening drive of the game. Niners grabbed this game right by the throat. 5 plays, 70 yards, in 2 minutes, 40 seconds. That was an explosive drive. Shanahan's screen calling rate has been down this year. We saw screens to Isaac Guerendo as he leaked out of the backfield. The screen to George Kittle, allowing blocks to set up downfield. Both of those plays went for big pickups. And then Brock Purdy throws that touchdown to Jauan Jennings from 7 yards out. Right away and immediately, the Niners are able to send a statement. We're not going to get embarrassed like we had the previous 2 weeks against Buffalo, and the week before that against Green Bay. I also thought Kyle Shanahan had to get creative with his play calling and his play designs instead of just leaning and hoping that Christian McCaffrey can be special. And so Shanahan, not forcing the ball to CMC, made this offense look refreshingly good, where you saw a multitude of players being involved. Jauan Jennings was spectacular. George Kittle had a great game. Brock Purdy was slinging the rock. You had a 20-plus yard reception to Debo. Didn't do much outside of that, but it was good to see him have that explosive. Isaac Guerendo in the run game and pass game looked really good. And how about Guerendo? We'll see what happens with that foot sprain, but the wheel route with the linebacker on him, what an adjustment he made on that football to reel it in. Picking up yards after the catch, after that screen on that first drive, that's what this kid is capable of. That's what the Niners saw when they moved up to take him in the 4th round of the NFL draft. And then specifically in the pass game, it should run through George Kittle. It should run through Jauan Jennings. George Kittle, by far and away, is the Niners' best receiving threat. 151 yards on 6 catches. Short, intermediate. He was dominant, picking up yards after the catch as a blocker. That's what he does. And so the fact that George Kittle caught a pass on the first pass play of the game against Buffalo and then didn't get a catch outside of that against the Bills, that's inexcusable. And with Brandon Ayuk out, with Deebo Samuel a shell of himself, the numbers back that up. Don't call me a Deebo hater. He doesn't look good and hasn't played well, and his yards from scrimmage over the last 4 or 5 games have been terrible. That should make Kyle Shanahan run the pass game through George Kittle, both in the red zone and outside of the red zone. And then the 49ers wide receiver one and their second best receiving target is Jauan Jennings. what a player he is. And Purdy has a great connection with Kittle, a great connection with Jauan Jennings, and we saw it result in a pretty seamless offensive performance. And then going back to the wheel route, just smart coaching. It goes for 27 yards, and the design of the play is to have Guerendo, 4.3 speed, go up against a linebacker. And he's able to beat him, and Brock Purdy, with pressure coming off that back foot, able to throw a dime in stride. And then, how about late in the game? Kyle Shanahan, with the Niners up multiple scores, first trotted out Jake Moody to kick a 43-yard field goal. Conservative play when the game is already probably over. But then Shanahan says, you know what? Moody's a little bit shaky. Let's be aggressive here. Look at what Dan Campbell did on Thursday Night Football. He went for it on 4th down 5 times. Converted 4 times. 2 resulted in touchdowns. Another in the red zone. Another won the game for Detroit. And so some of my analysis after that game that I put out on my social media pages, this is what Kyle Shanahan can learn from Dan Campbell. Stop coaching scared. Don't be so conservative, because when you are those two things, sometimes you lose in the NFL, especially with the rules catered to the offense. So Shanahan calls that timeout. He goes for it on 4th down. Niners score a touchdown a few plays later, and Patrick Taylor runs it in. Be aggressive and end the ball game. I love that from Kyle Shanahan, and he was 2 of 3 on challenges. San Francisco has also struggled all year in the red zone. What did I say at the top of the show? The Bears had the number 1 red zone defense in the NFL. The Niners, 5 of 6 in the red area against Chicago on Sunday. And so this was a really good coaching performance. Now, is it too little too late? I think so. Is it unfortunate it took until week 14 for the Niners to find their identity? For sure. Did it come against a bad football team overall? Yeah. Have the Niners won against a team with a winning record when they faced that team this year? They haven't. And so those are issues. But you want to see adjustments. You want to see Shanahan, who's had a bad year, have a better game. He did that. He was pressed and asked about trade rumors and him being sent somewhere else this offseason. He said, I don't know why those rumors come out, but I don't want to be anywhere else in the world other than here. Going back to Jauan Jennings and George Kittle. The 49ers this offseason signed Jauan Jennings to a contract extension worth like $7 million per year through the 2025 season. So next year will be the expiring year of his contract. This offseason, I think the Niners have to lock him up again. Great player development story, great for the culture, always brings it, always plays hard. You love the energy, the swagger, the confidence, the physicality that he plays with. And this is a player who was a 7th-round pick out of Tennessee, who didn't make the team as a rookie, went on the practice squad, was hurt. And every year since then, he's gotten better, and now he's the best wide receiver on this team. And as you look ahead, if Brandon Ayuk can return to being even close to the player that he was last year, you have Jennings, Cowing, Pearsall. It's not a bad wide receiver room right there. And then as far as George Kittle goes, George Kittle is getting a little bit older. George Kittle has not been injured as much as some casual fans think. He's still the best tight end in football. He has brought it this year. He has played his ass off this season. Last year, he was a first-team All-Pro. This year, he should be a first-team All-Pro. And you see that when he is involved, he is still the number 1 tight end in the game and an absolutely elite player. I don't want to see 85 play anywhere else. And so the Niners have taken care of business with their own players. Some of these deals have not worked out. Ayuk so far, CMC so far, Debo so far, been out of shape, injured, production has gone down. You can count on George Kittle and Jauan Jennings to bring it every single Sunday as long as they're healthy. Now coming up next, did a team meeting help spark this Niners turnaround against Chicago? We'll dive into that coming up next. But first, let's give a shout out to our friends at Game Time for making today's Monday edition of the 49ers Report possible. Good atmosphere and good weather at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara yesterday. And it's a quick turnaround for the Niners. They will host the Los Angeles Rams on Thursday Night Football. It's always a big rivalry game between the Rams and the Niners. And the Rams put up 40-plus points against the Bills in Week 14. And so this game has huge playoff implications and NFC West implications. Both teams are fighting to try and win this division with 4 games left. If you want to go to that game, download the Game Time app. Best seats, lowest price guaranteed. Prices drop as the event gets closer, and you can see plenty of tickets available for home and away games. And speaking of this Rams-Niners game, a lot of tickets available at Levi's Stadium. If you still believe in this team or you want to check out your beloved Niners, here's how we can help you out. Here's how you can save some money. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS, for $20 off. Terms apply. First purchase only. What time is it? Game time. You can also get concerts, comedy shows, theater events, and all those types of tickets as well, thanks to Game Time Picks. All right, so did a team meeting help spark this turnaround for the Niners and lead to this dominant performance? Yes, it's the Chicago Bears, but the Niners played differently. They're playing physical. They're playing fast. They're flying to the football. They're not missing tackles. I think they had their fewest tackles missed on the defensive side of the football all year. And then offense, they had a rhythm, man. So Kyle Shanahan on Saturday night had Brock Purdy and Deommodore Lenoir address the team. That's interesting because is that the new wave of leaders for this team? Purdy due for an extension. Lenoir just signed his. Ian Rappaport reporting over the weekend that the Niners plan to sign Purdy to that contract extension. It had been a little while since Shanahan asked his players to speak at the team meeting prior to a game in this type of fashion. And George Kittle, after the game, talked about this, how some players respond differently to adversity, to desperation. He feels as though this year the Niners haven't won in it enough. They haven't been desperate, whereas in seasons prior, he's been on Niners teams that play every single play like it's their last. And I thought this quote was pretty notable from Kittle. When Shanahan was first starting off, he would have one of the vets talk about things that were important to them and why they play the game. But he hadn't done that in a while. But that changed on Saturday. The Niners going into this game 5-7, season hanging on by a thread. And so Shanahan picked 2 of the younger leaders on this football team in Lenoir and Purdy to talk to their teammates. Well, what happened with Brock Purdy? Played his best game of the year. Uber efficient, 20-25, 325 yards, NFL best 13 yards per attempt. The shoulder looked good, launching the ball downfield. And that was the Chicago pass defense. I mentioned the numbers earlier that also entered the game number 5 in EPA. Not a bad defensive unit. And for this entire offense, were they juiced up for this game too? That first half statistically, one of the most dominant first halves or any halves in a Kyle Shanahan game. The Niners outgained the Bears 320 yards to 4. We talked about that during the halftime show yesterday. Purdy averaging those 13.4 net yards per pass attempt. And Caleb Williams was at negative 0.5 net yards per pass attempt due to him getting sacked. And this Niners defense, they were able to generate 7 sacks on the day, by the way, of Caleb Williams. And Kyle Shanahan said, look, momentum is contagious, not just on offense, but all 3 phases. Psychology is contagious. You try to think like one and play like one, and I felt that was the case for our team today. They played like it. But what's frustrating, what took so damn long for the Niners to play desperate to finally have a performance like this? Because when you look at the NFC playoff picture, it is an uphill battle for the Niners to win the division, and I don't think they can become a wild card team given the landscape of the NFC. So the Lions and Eagles, 12-1, 11-2, the top 2 seeds in the NFC. You have the Seattle Seahawks, who have won 4 games in a row. They beat the Cardinals for the second time in 3 weeks. They are now 8-5. And the Niners are 6-7. And so San Francisco has split with Seattle. If they won that game against Seattle a few weeks ago, they'd be in first place in the division. So that's how costly that game was. And the Niners here 2 games back of the division lead with 4 games left. And so they need Seattle to lose at least 2 games. And then as far as the wild card teams go, Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay, they're making the playoffs. And I don't see the Washington Commanders with their remaining schedule letting go of that 7th and final wild card spot. They have the Saints on the road, but Derek Carr's not going to play. They have the Eagles at home, could lose that game. But then they have the Falcons and the Cowboys. And so it's going to be hard for the Niners to claim that 7th and final wildcard spot. I think the pathway is to win the division, but they're 2 games back with 4 games left to go. So will the Niners make the playoffs? We'll break this down in a full video a little bit later. So be on the lookout for that. Clinching scenarios, playoff scenarios, the math, all that stuff. But right now, will the Niners make the playoffs? Y for yes, N for no. Let me know. And as you venture down to the comment section, hit that sub button.